Yo, what's up everybody, it's Victon here with my first in-game build guide of the league, the Stone Golem, Necromancer, and Elementalist. We're going to be going over both versions of the build in this guide, as they are both very similar, but with a few differences that we'll of course talk about. So this build has been an absolute blast to play all the way from level 1 up to now, where I've killed all the in-game bosses, killed a few Maven boss invitations, Maven herself, and have been delving a good bit as well. I said it in the League Start guide, and I'll say it again, Golems are in the best spot they have been in since the Heist League, and are feeling really good. We have a pretty strong survivability, and great DPS. This in-game version is sitting between 13.5 and 14.5 million DPS between the two versions of the build, which is more than enough for basically all the content in the game. I haven't done the Uber Breach Lords, but I can't imagine not being able to take those down with these numbers. Defensive wise, we're sitting at 80% max Ellie res, 75% chaos res, strong life regen per second, and between 80 and 90% physical damage reduction between Necro and Ellie. Several solid layers of defense means you're going to be able to do some pretty scary content and survive pretty well. If you're just doing normal maps and normal bossings, you're probably never going to die with this build. It's really only when you get into that crazy content, doing 100% delirious content, or anything like that, you're really going to start kind of maybe getting a little sketchy. You're still rarely going to die, but occasionally you're going to find that one shot, which is to be expected in that kind of content, so no worries there, at least in my opinion. Basically, the build turned out exactly as we'd hope, and it's been an absolute breeze to play through up until the end game. I know tons of you guys have been messaging me as well, saying that it's been working great for you guys, so I'm always happy to hear that. Also, I wanted to give you guys an idea of what this build will go over, so you can get a good idea before you spend time watching it. So I've got an updated POB for both versions, Elementalist and Necro, so check out those in the video's description. From there, I have a spreadsheet that comes with trade links to every single piece of gear that you're going to want to buy, craft, all the way from that budget version, all the way up to this min-maxed version. And lastly, before we dive into the path of building, I just wanted to mention that I occasionally do stream on Twitch, so if you ever have a question, feel free to come on over there and ask away. Always happy to help you guys out in any way that I can with any of my builds. The link was going to be in the description below for my Twitch, and also if you're interested in supporting the channel, I do have a Patreon linked below, which is going to get you access to my Discord community and personal build reviews that I actually do all the time for people. Alright, so enough of that, let's hop right into the guide, and feel free to check the timestamps below if you want to skip around to certain parts of the guide. Alright, here we are in the path of building. We're going to go over the Stone Golem Elementalist first, and we'll talk about the Necromancer after that. So basically kind of what you're looking at here for the actual POB itself. Normally, like I do my League Starter guides, I do like a whole, level 1 all the way up to level 100. We're not going to do that for this one. If you guys are interested in kind of how you level up the build, definitely check out the League Starter version of this. It'll be linked in the description. This is more for kind of once you get to that level 90 plus. Or even like, I guess, 85 plus, and you're kind of looking at what to upgrade your gear towards and all that good stuff. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go over pretty much everything that you need to know to get the build going and be successful with, all the important passive nodes here. We're going to go over all the masteries, all that good stuff. We're not going to go too crazy in depth here, but I'll definitely get you everything that you need to know. From there, we're going to go over the skills, and we're going to go over the items from there as well. So let's go ahead and start at the tree itself. So first and foremost, and I kind of will, I guess, bring this up just so that you guys can kind of know leveling up the build. I'll give you a couple leveling up tips as well. Kind of with the masteries, there's a couple masteries that are just so crazy for leveling up. Firstly is this wheel right here. This wheel is so amazing for defenses for your minions. It gives them basically capped elemental resistances and capped chaos resistance. Super good. What I would do when you're leveling this up though is actually get this one right here. Minions recover 5% of life on minion death. So as you're leveling up, you should be leveling up with skeletons as well as, if you're doing golems, zombies, all that good stuff, right? Again, check the League Starter version, but you'll definitely have skeletons in there. So anytime that you summon skeletons and it replaces like an old skeleton, they count as dying. So it's going to recover 5% of life to the rest of your minions. Basically, when you take this, as you're leveling up and you're casting skeletons all the time, your minions are literally never going to die. I did that in the campaign and even probably up until red maps, and it worked really good. My minions literally never died because they were always on full HP because of that node right there. And then eventually later, when you get into maybe like yellow maps and above, you switch out of skeletons, you'll drop that node and you'll get this one right here. Minions leads 1% of damage. Cool. The tree is pretty basic as far as you know, what we did versus the league start versus what's going on now. There's really not too many changes here, but I'll still kind of go over everything. This is the first minion mastery that we're going to get for offense, 20% increase effective offerings, which is pretty nice, especially because we do have a flesh offering that we're using, so it's just going to give them a little bit extra attack speed, which is pretty solid. This one right here is going to be our life wheel. 50 max life is really, really good, especially in, you know, you're going to probably get that around level 20, so 50 life when leveling up is pretty crazy, actually. Pretty basic up here. We're just getting death attunement. We're going to go over here. We're going to get some more life. Right here, we're going to get regen 2% of life per second. One thing to note that's a little bit different from the League Start version is in the League Start version, I had Vitality right here, or I think, what is it called? It's called Vitality has 100% increased reservation efficiency. You can do that while leveling while you're using Vitality. Eventually, you're actually going to drop Vitality, and you want to respec to regen 2% life when you're moving. So from there, we do, of course, get Golem Commander. That is the bread and butter of the build, getting that one extra summon Golem. And then for our mastery, we get, I actually picked this up and I liked it quite a bit. There's two different things you can get here. The Convocation, 40% increased cooldown recovery, I like a lot. It makes it really fast. I think it goes from a 3-second down to like a 2-second cooldown. So really good there. But if you don't want that, the other good option here is minions have 8% to all maximum elemental resistances. Also really, really good for that, for keeping your minions alive. But I've been doing really crazy, scary content, and my minions have not been dying, so I dropped that, and they're still doing totally fine, and I like the Convocation a little bit more. So that one's kind of personal preference. I would get these nodes kind of last tier, so these are not that great of nodes. This is really only good for like high tier red map clearing. That 30% chance to gain onslaught, so it does do quite a bit of extra damage, 20% increased attack speed and movement speed, which is great for when you're at mapping. It does literally nothing for bosses, so honestly I wouldn't pick this up until you're like level 92 plus to get those nodes right there. So moving down here, we get some life nodes. Nothing too crazy there. We get the life mastery, which is really good, 10% life. That reduced life recovery rate really doesn't affect us too much at all. We do get, of course, this reservation wheel right here, along with the 15% mana reservation of efficiency skills there. That is what is going to allow us to run all of our auras that we will talk about here shortly. This little wheel right here is fantastic for damage for our minions. Pick that up as soon as possible. This one right here I would not get until later as well. This minion master, I just picked this up myself. You're really not going to do this probably until at least red maps, once you have host chieftains giving your party frenzy charges, and also using assassin's mark on a target for even more. Until you get that, it's not really worth it, so don't get that probably until maybe high tier red maps. Moving down here, we're just going to get this life wheel right here, which is really, really good. And we're going to start coming down here. We're going to get this node right here, which is fantastic. Minions deal 6%, or have 6% chance to deal double damage. It's basically a 6% more multiplier. It's actually really crazy. For our minion offensive mastery here, around this time, you're going to be probably around level 70 plus. Getting that minions attacks overwhelm 20% physical damage reduction. It's fantastic. Basically, that means that all bosses that have armor, for example, Cyrus, right? Typically, like when you do your configuration, right, when it says is the enemy a boss, when you click Cyrus, it makes it lose a lot of damage for you, right? But for our build, since we have that damage penetration right there on armor, it's actually, you lose very little on bosses. So your true damage basically is what your actual damage is to bosses. So actually, really, really strong node right there. Armor mastery is actually pretty important here. We do need this if you run determination. Now there's two options that we'll talk about in the skills. I actually do not run determination, but I did want to mention this because it is an option. You can run determination if you want. If you don't want to run determination, for example, I have been using purity of elements instead for the ailment immunity basically. Then what you would do is you would get this one, 600 to armor while affected by a guard skill buff. Very, very solid there as well. So that is actually what I do right now, is the 600 armor while the guard skill. And then you just come down here and you get lots of life. And then that rounds you out at level 100. And let's kind of go over the stats here that we have for a level 100 character. And again, so like the last, let's see, the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So yeah, so about level 92 is when I would fill out these life nodes. and then I would fill out these damage nodes here. So I would maybe do the life nodes first, and then your last like 4 or 5 nodes should be going up to a Ravenous Horde. Or you can do the other way around. Either one is totally fine. You can do those first and then get these 3 life nodes. Whichever one you want to do first is totally fine. And the reason I say the life nodes are kind of important is because we only have 4.7k life, but just take note that that's not really that big of a deal because we have so many layers of defense. And again, you don't die very often, if ever, especially if you're just doing regular maps. So it's really not that big of a deal. So yeah, let's take a look at our snapshot of our damage here and our defenses. So moving down here for physical damage reduction, we are chilling. This is the Elementalist version. So the Elementalist version has a lot more defense than the Necro version, okay? And that's on both Carrion Golems and that's on the Stone Golem build, which we'll talk about the Carrion Golems in the next video, by the way. So what do you got here? We got almost 1,000 life regen. That's actually crazy. So that's really strong life regen. We go down to our physical damage reduction. We have a flat 90% physical damage reduction. We are running a Chaos Golem, and that is what is getting our physical damage reduction up to 90%. Of course, we have a good amount of armor for sure, but the Chaos Golem, it's giving us like almost 27% physical damage reduction, like flat, which is very, very, very strong. So we have 80% all elemental resistances, and we have 75% chaos resistance. And we have that by our chest piece, which is the brass dome, which we'll talk about here in a second. And then our DPS is just under 4 million DPS. And that is for the Elementalist version. We're going to go over the Necro version here after this. Going over to our skills, we'll talk about these real quick. So this is, again, the Stone Golem version. So we're going with Stone Golem. We go with Awakened Minion Damage, Awakened Brutality, which, by the way, is now you have a 10% chance to crush enemies for 4 seconds on hit. So basically, they're always going to be crushed. And Crush gives them a physical damage reduction penetration. So like armor penetration, basically. Very solid there. Awakened Melee Fizz, which also is very, very good. It's 10% chance to intimidate on hit for 4 seconds. So basically everybody's always intimidated. So that's 10% more damage on that. We're going to do Impale. And I do not have Awakened Multi-Strike. And if you guys don't have Awakened Multi-Strike either, don't worry about that. You can get a Divergent Multi-Strike, and that is quite a bit better than the regular Multi-Strike. So that's about 1 Exalt compared to a lot more Exalts. And I was kind of looking at prices here. So you can get an Awakened Melee Physical. You can basically get all of these 3 right here at level 5. Like if you don't want to level it up yourself, you can just get level 5 versions for probably an average of about 4.5 Exalts each. Like this one's a lot cheaper, and I think the Brutality was a little bit more expensive, and the Melee Fizz was kind of in the middle. But again, if you don't have Awakened Gems, it's not a huge deal. You're still going to be doing great DPS. I think you're around like 8 million DPS without the Awakened Gems. The Awakened Gems really do add a ton of extra damage though. So definitely work towards, like, those should be some of your first big purchases for sure. Once you get your 6th link, is getting those Awakened Gems. They add a ton of damage. So going on to our helmet here, we have Spectres, Feeding Frenzy, Animate Guardian, and Life Tap. Now for our Spectres, we're going to have, this is what our Spectres are going to be, okay? We're going to have 1 Host Chieftain, 1 Carnage Chieftain, and 1 Demon Harpy. Okay, and that is in a helmet with +3. Sadly, on the Elementalist version, we do not get 4 Spectres. We only get 3 Spectres. So that's what it's going to be: 1 Host Chieftain, 1 Carnage Chieftain, and 1 Demon Harpy. Okay, and then we're going to do Feeding Frenzy, Animate Guardian, Life Tap. Now, for our Animate Guardian, I'm going to have a video come out with this video. It's a full Animate Guardian guide on specifically what I did for my Animate Guardian. That'll be a shorter guide, but it will be everything you need to know about the Animate Guardian. So check that out in my channel if you're interested in seeing how I set up my Animate Guardian. The Animate Guardian, guys, it adds so much damage. And I think, let me do the math in my head. It's about 1.5 Exalts to set up a pretty crazy Animate Guardian that gives you so much damage and good survivability. It's absolutely worth 1.5 Exalts to set up this Animate Guardian. Cool. Moving on to our next one here, we have Desecrate. Make sure to keep that at level 1. There's no reason to make it go higher than level 1. We have Anomalous Assassin's Mark. Anomalous gives you a lot more extra damage. We have Decoy Totem. Decoy Totem got buffed this league. It takes less damage, so it's a pretty solid choice, especially for tough bosses. Going down to the next one, we have Pride, Generosity, and Awaken Pride, Dread Banner, and Awakened Generosity. Do note here that we have Divergent Pride, Divergent Dread Banner, and just Awakened Generosity. And actually, Awakened Generosity doesn't do too much for us. So if you don't have Awakened Generosity, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Now, that is on our gloves, right? So I do want to mention this. So that's a 3-link, okay? Make sure you have a 3-link gloves there. Your 1-link in your gloves, you do not want to link Purity of Elements to Generosity. Or if you use Determination, same thing. You do not want to link that to Generosity because that'll give it to your minions and not you. So it's still in your gloves, but don't link it to Generosity. Just want to mention that. So the reason we're using Purity of Elements, at least myself, is I'm doing a lot of Delirium content, and everything is just so crazy in there, especially with freezes, that I wanted to make sure I got Purity of Elements just to be as safe as possible. It also helped me gear out my character a little bit easier because it's going to give me a ton of extra elemental resistances. So I thought that that was a little bit better than Determination because I'm already at 90% physical damage reduction. There was no reason for me to go Determination. So Purity of Elements, in my opinion, is better. Maybe another choice if you are getting all of your resistance, not your resistance, you're immune to elemental ailments from other places. Like you can get freeze from your Pantheon, for example. You could do like maybe haste here instead. So that could be another option, haste. Moving on, we have Flesh and Stone, Maim, Portal, and Summon Chaos Golem. Do note here we have Anomalous Summon Chaos Golem. That is going to give it increased buff effect. So it is pretty good to get that anomalous version. Moving on, we have Convocation in our Ring 2. We have Flame Dash in our Ring 1. And we have Vol Molten Shell, which is a fantastic, because we have so much armor here, it's actually really, really strong. When you pop your Vol Molten Shell, you can take so much damage from that shield. It's really, really strong. And then we have Increased Duration and Flesh Offering. Do note we have Divergent Flesh Offering, which is actually a big damage boost. It's an additional 10% increased attack speed. So really, really good. And that pairs really good with our node over here, which is the Increased Effective Offering. So just really, really solid there. Moving on, and I think that is it with our skills. So let's go ahead and move on to our items. We are rocking 2 Cold Iron points. What I would say is it actually does not add too much damage to go to the second Cold Iron point. It is, of course, more damage. But if you just have 1 Cold Iron point and 1 Clay Shaper, that's totally fine as well. But of course, you eventually do want to move to the 2 Cold Iron points. For our helmet here, you can craft this yourself, guys, with and I actually don't even have like the best helmet here. I don't even have an enchant on it or anything. And I'll kind of mention that when we go over my gear. This is the in-game version of the build, and I will specifically tell you guys what to work towards, but this is my gear specifically doing this much damage, right? There's still a few things that I can improve upon, and I'll tell you guys what you can do for that. So like the helmet right here. First off, craft it yourself with an Elder helmet. And this is what you're looking for. You're looking for the +3 or +2 is fine as well, and then minion life as well. And then just try and maybe get some life on there too, if you can. Fantastic. This is a great helmet for me. Ideally, you would also want, so there's a couple things here. If you want to mess around with Stone Golems and Chaos Golems, or I'm sorry, if you want to mess around with Stone Golems and Carrion Golems, I would suggest going with the Flesh Offering Increase additional attack speed enchant. That's what I would do instead of, for example, like, Stone Golems deal 40% increased damage. Because then you can kind of go between Carrion Golems and you can go between Stone Golems, and your enchant works just fine, if you guys get what I'm saying there. So that would be my suggestion for the helmet. For our body armor, we're going to go with Brass Dome. It's insane. They buffed it. It's insane. So 4,000 armor, okay, which is very solid in itself. And we're also getting +5 to all maximum elemental resistances. That's how we're hitting that 80%. Really crazy. Now the downside here is strength provides no bonus to maximum life, so we are taking a life hit here, which kind of sucks, but it's not that big of a deal. We're getting so much extra benefits from it. And on top of that, we're getting take no damage from critical strikes, which is also very, very good for another defensive layer. For our gloves here, these are pretty basic, and I followed the same concept I mentioned in my League Start video. I get high life, I get 1 elemental resistance, and then I get a chaos resistance, and I try and leave an open suffix so I can craft what you see there, like an elemental and a chaos resistance. Doing that kind of process on all of my items here, like as you can see I did it with my boots here as well, that's what's going to get us really easy up to the cap element or cap of chaos resistance. So our boots, same thing, super simple boots. They're not even that great. Just life, 1 Ele res, chaos res, move speed, right? Now do try and get them on armor bases though, guys, because that's really going to help you get that armor increased up higher. Now for our amulet here, I do want to mention this. This is not what I would say is an in-game amulet. The reason I have to use this is because of my elemental resistances. Once I get kind of better gear between my gloves, my boots, my rings, and I have more elemental resistances, I can drop this amulet, and what you should be looking for is +1 to strength gems, and then +1 to all spell gems, right? And you can craft that with a awakener orb, and that's what you would want to do here. Now, one thing to note is that that's for stone golems, because stone golems are strength. We'll talk about it in the carrion golem build, but carrion golems are intelligence, so you would want intelligence with that. So do you note that your amulet won't be able to kind of transition between stone golems and carrion golems if you are doing that and you do the plus gems. But again, I don't even have that, and I'm at 14 million DPS. So if I did have that amulet, it would probably go up another 1.5 million to 2 million DPS from where it is right now. And I also don't even have the plus endurance charge on there. And I probably actually could remove that right now and put another endurance charge on there. So +1 to minimum endurance charge craft. That would be fantastic there. I could do that myself. I just don't have that craft yet, so I need to get that. Same thing with this ring. I use that same concept, right, of 1 life, elemental resist, chaos res, and then a craft. Again, I could put the +1 to minimum endurance charge on there, and that would be ideal. But again, I'm already at 90% physical damage reduction, so it's not that big of a deal. It is still probably the better choice to do once you have enough resistance on your gear, and you can do that. I would still suggest it because it is flat physical damage resistance, which is much better than armor. So our second ring here, though, this is important. You want to do the same thing, right? So you want life, resistance, chaos res. But on our second one, we're going to do shock nearby enemies for 4 seconds when you focus. You're going to do that craft. We do not have skitter bots in this build. As you saw earlier, we have flesh and stone with maim. So we do not have a way to shock without this craft right here. And its shock is very, very important. It's 15% more multiplier, and you'll see later in the tree that we're getting even more damage out of it because we're upping our increase effect of ailments. So that is very important if you want extra damage, is shock nearby enemies. For our belt, we have a darkness enthroned here, and for our jewels in it, we have pretty basic ones here that's not that good. I think this was a tier 3 roll, maybe a tier 2 roll, but a little bit of life, which was nice. Minions deal increased damage if you use a minion skill recently, and minions deal additional physical damage. Pretty good, but it's not the best roll on the physical damage, not a big deal. Actually, that might have been a tier 2, and I think this one was a tier 3 roll. But on this one, I got a little bit extra dex as well, which really helped me. That is adding, I think, like 27 dexterity, which was really big. Some life, some minion damage, and then minions deal additional physical damage. So that's kind of what you're looking at for there. You don't have to get that dex if you can get dex somewhere else. I got this so I could get a different ring, right? So you might want a dexterity on one of your rings instead. Just note that there. And for our flasks, we have a Blood of the Karui, which is just our basic life flask here. I would definitely suggest you guys do the exact flasks that I have here, because it is the optimal setup here. So we have a granite flask, and on this granite flask, we have increased armor during flask effect, which is really, really good. And I have increased duration as well. This flask is basically up 24/7. It's got an 8-second duration. And I did use when you take a savage hit, but I honestly am still playing piano with my flasks, and they're up pretty much 24/7. So that's what I do there. For my quicksilver, I just have increased extra movement speed on there. For my basalt flask, I have immunity to poison. Poison is still a little scary for us. And then we're going to do used when you become poisoned, because we are elemental ailment immune, but we are not poison immune. So that's why that is a little important there. And for our quartz flask, this is really important for doing really scary content, getting a quartz flask so you can phase through monsters. I do have immunity to bleeding there, and the reason I'm doing that in the Elementalist version is because we do not have the bone barrier that you would in the Necromancer, and that gives you bleed immunity, so we don't have that in the Elementalist version, so it's very important to get this on this flask. And of course, the enchantment there is used when you start bleeding. Now, for our jewels here, this is our large cluster jewel. We have Renewal Rotten Claws. That's kind of your base of what you want. Ideally, you would want Renewal, Rotten Claws, and also Vicious Bite. That jewel is about 4 Exalt right now, but that would add quite a bit of damage. For our jewels down here, we of course need the Anima Stone, right? So we have the Anima Stone, and then we need a bunch of Primordial Harmonies. The reason we're going with a bunch of Primordial Harmonies is to make our Stone Golem slam basically be almost instant, right? He's slamming all the time, slam jamming away. And that's why we want the harmonies. Now, the most important stat on the harmony is the summon golems have 40% plus is what I would shoot for, increased cooldown recovery rate. That's what makes their slam happen more often. And on top of that, if you want to min-max, I would also suggest, guys, getting that, the implicit right there, increased effect of non-damaging ailments. That's going to buff our shock from our ring a lot. If you have it on all of these, it is actually a ton of extra damage. And I did not include that on here. It would actually be even more damage than that. I think it's up to almost 15 million DPS with the increased effect of shock on there. So that is what I would do. Of course, make sure you get one might so that makes them aggressive. Cool. That is all of that. I do want to show you guys the configuration here so that you guys know that there's no shenanigans going on. Are your minions always on full life? Your minions are literally always going to be on full life. They regen so much, they take so little damage, they have max chaos res, they have max elemental resistances. They take no damage. They literally take no damage. Do your minions have power and frenzy charges? They of course will, because we are using Carnage Chieftains and Host Chieftains as our specters. That's where that comes from. And they're pretty much always at max charges with us using the life tap there. Feeding Frenzy is of course active. Pride effect, I actually have his initial here, and that's 14 million. You guys want to see what it is with max effect? We're up to almost 17 million. So pretty solid there. And either one is good. So basically the difference between maximum and initial is maximum is if you yourself have been around the target for more than 4 seconds. Just so you know, it really only happens on bosses, but you can click either one, to be honest, doesn't really matter. Stance, blood stance is of course what we're going to be using. Going over here is the enemy maimed. That actually doesn't do anything, but I checked it because they're always going to be maimed. Is the enemy shocked? Again, I did not check this because I did not put the increase effect of the shock. Just again, because I don't want you guys to think there's shenanigans going on, even though we are getting extra damage from our jewels there, but I didn't even put that in there. Is the enemy intimidated? That is from melee physical damage. Awakened. Is the enemy crushed? That is from brutality awakened. And then is the enemy a boss? Cyrus. And then now let's go over this over here. So minions deal, and I've kind of put right here what it is, right? So minions deal 4% more damage, and that's actually pretty conservative for a demon harpy. It's going to usually be more than that. But I was just trying to be conservative. Minions deal 10% more damage. That's from the Kingmaker's Culling Strike. Minions have 50% critical strike multiplier. That is also the Kingmaker from your Animate Guardian. Nearby enemies take 9% increased physical damage. That is from your helmet for your Animate Guardian. And you can apply an additional curse. That is from your Animate Guardian as well. So basically I've plugged in the Animate Guardian DPS and your Spectre DPS, your Spectres as well. And again, check out my Animate Guardian video if you want to kind of understand this a little bit more. Very good. So that is the Stone Golem Elementalist version. So let's take a look here. We're sitting at right under 14 million DPS. Now let's go over to the Necro version of the same build. Now I'm not going to go over everything that I just did in the other one. I'm really just going to talk about the differences between the two because they're very, very similar. Okay. So first and foremost, as you can see down here, we're at 14.3 million. So it's actually pretty close. It's not as much as you would think. We're doing, yes, a little bit more damage, sure, but we don't have as much life regen. We're sitting at 624 compared to 1,000. For physical damage reduction, we are down to 71% instead of the flat 90, right? Now, if you use determination, that would be 90%. So just note that. So let's fix this like we did earlier in the other one. There we go. Well, it's a little bit more. It's 73% is what it actually is. But still, so 73% with Purity of Elements. It'll be 90% if you choose Determination and you just want to do your ailment immunity somewhere else, whether that be Pantheons, Flasks, whatever you want to do. So, pretty similar defenses. You know what, actually, guys, I apologize. You know what I didn't do? Let's go back. Let's talk about the actual Ascendancy. And it's pretty basic though, honestly. It's just 2 extra golems here. It gives a ton of golem buff effect, which is why our life regen is so high. This is what is really big for our defenses for Elementalist, okay? So it triggers level 20 Primal Aegis when allocated. So basically what this means is, and I'm trying to remember, I think you have basically like a 2100 elemental damage shield that comes up on you every 4 seconds. Okay, so that's actually pretty crazy given the fact that we have already 80% elemental resistances over here. And on top of that, we have a 2100 elemental damage shield that comes up every 4 seconds. So that is what is making us really tanky on the Elementalist version. Very good. Let's go back to the Necro version. And so on the Necro, we obviously don't have that, right? So it's a little bit less on the Elemental. We still have the 80% because the gear is actually all the same. Everything on the gear is literally the same build. The tree is literally the same tree, guys. It's literally the same tree. Where the difference is obviously the ascendancy. So I guess I can talk about that. It's +2 to level of minion gems. It's bone barrier, which is a nice damage shield. So it's a little bit different, right? Because that's kind of, it's a different type of shield compared to the primal Aegis. It's still good, and you're getting physical damage reduction, so it's still not bad at all. But it's not as good as the primal Aegis. Now, Commander of Darkness is more damage and also elemental resistances for you and your minions, so pretty solid. I would definitely say because of this, your unnatural strength +2 to level of all minion gems, that is making all of your minions super tanky. They're definitely never going to die on the Necro version versus the Elementalist version. They're going to have a little bit less life, and I'll give you an example. My Animate Guardian on my Necro version has 120,000 life. On my Elementalist version, he has 80,000 life. So to kind of give you guys an idea of what's the difference between the two. Very good. Now that is literally all the changes on the tree. Let's go over the skills, because that's where it kind of really differs. And it really doesn't even differ that much. It's just a couple different things that we got to do. For example, we're not going to be using Chaos Golem. We're only using Stone Golems, and we're only using the 4 Stone Golems, so no Chaos Golem. So with that, let's see where it is. We're able to do, this is the only change, Cast on Death Portal, right? Over here, we had Summon Chaos Golem Portal instead. Over here, we're just going to do Cast on Death Portal, and it's pretty silly. You don't even need that if you really don't want to. So you could even do something else over here if you really wanted to. And I think that's literally the only change on the actual tree, other than, again, you know, if making that choice, if you want to do Determination or Purity of Elements. I would probably suggest on the Necro version doing Determination, so you can get the physical damage reduction up to that 90%, and then figuring out a way to do your elemental ailment immunity elsewhere. So for example, the Pantheon, you could do the Brine King, and then you cannot be frozen, so that would be very good. And then I would do maybe on your flasks, you could do something different, like you could do, instead of bleeding, you wouldn't need bleeding because you have that on your bone barrier. So you could do you could either keep a quartz flask, or you could do a ruby flask with the ignite immunity. So you could do that, and then maybe you could even do like your basalt, instead of immunity to poison, you could do immunity to shock, right? Something like that, and then now you're ailment immune, and you could do Determination. So just something to consider there. But that's literally the only changes between the two. Everything else is exactly the same. So why would you choose one or the other? That is the question I get all the time from everybody. And I'll probably make a full kind of video on it, and also like when to transition between the two builds, but I'll give you guys the short version right now. So basically, Necromancer is going to have more damage early on, right? So in the, you know, white tier maps, the yellow tier maps, you're going to have actually probably about 20 to 30% more damage than the Elementalist version. You're going to be slightly less tanky than the Elementalist version. The Elementalist version will have quite a bit more survivability, but you'll be going to be doing 20 to 30% more damage. Now, as you progress through your gear and you're getting better and better gear and more damage, especially the Awakened Gems, once you have all your Awakened Gems, I think it personally is better to switch from Necromancer to Elementalist. As you could tell, the damage was not that much of a difference. 14.3 compared to 13.8 or 9, right? That's not that much of a difference. So at that point, I would rather have Elementalist and be more tanky than have a little bit more damage. So long story short, the Necro version has more damage in the earlier tiers of maps, white tier and yellow tier, and even probably red tier. But once you start min-maxing your gear and you're able to get those Awakened Gems, and you get both of your Cold Iron points, at that point, the damage is pretty similar between Necro and Elementalist. And at that point, I would go ahead and suggest going over to Elementalist. Very good. That's pretty much all I got on this guide for you guys. I hope it was informative. I hope you guys got a whole bunch out of it. Actually, I'll show you guys one more thing. So that's the slam that does 14 million. Their default attack is actually still doing 9 million DPS as well. So pretty solid. Sorry, that keeps popping up. So pretty solid, even just their regular attack, but with how many primordial harmonies we have, they're going to be slam jamming all the time for 14 million DPS. So pretty good. But yeah, that's all I got for this one, guys. I appreciate you guys sticking through. I think this was a little bit longer of a video, so definitely appreciate that. Check the video description below if you guys want to see the trade links for all of these items. And hit that like button if you did enjoy the video. Also, if you guys are enjoying this build, if y'all are playing it, let me know in the comments. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments section as well, and I'll do my best to answer every one that I can. And that's all I got for this one, guys. Do note, like I said, I'm gonna have the Anime Guardian guide out as well right with this one. So when this comes out, the Anime Guardian guide will come out, and I will also be releasing a Carrion Golem guide for both Necromancer and Elementalist as well. So if you're interested in checking that, check it out. I'll catch you guys in the next one.